Oh, your yippies?
Yeah, yippies and ourselves too.
Council.
Would you have the yippies? 5 yippies? What's one day we do?
I think they got scooped up.
Do you have the yippies 1 day a week or 2? I try to push this through.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
One day, but one day to be 3 days.
Judy's Glen today.
Is she? Okay, good. Are we waiting, Lori, for some?
No, we're good.
We're good.
We're good.
Okay, thank you everybody for coming to our task force on cleanliness and security in the downtown. My name is Councillor Parr, Ward 2, and I am the chair of this task force, have been throughout this term. We appreciate all who are in attendance and the many who are here to speak on the main item on today's agenda. There are other items on the agenda as per requests from some of our task force members and ultimately work that we generally discuss and appreciate in this particular forum. The Task Force on Cleanliness and Security was devised probably about 9 years ago, Kathy, from Andrea Horvath's reign here in Ward 2, and certainly is one that looks at both cleanliness and security in the downtown core. This task force in recent times and since the inception of the Task Force on Cleanliness and Security in the downtown has been responsible for such things as regular street sweeping, garbage cleanups, and various other associated aspects of cleanliness and security, and a lot is put into place thanks to those who sit around this table, and we are represented well from both residents and executive directors of the BIAs. And so to help with that, certainly we'll have a great discussion today, and who it is that is discussing and possibly moving some motions. Let's probably, I think it would be prudent to introduce ourselves, at least the committee, and then I'll try to introduce you to staff as we go so you know who's talking to who. So we'll start with you, John, if you want to introduce yourself, and if you have anything you'd like to say.
Yep, it's on when the red light.
John Hawker, I'm a citizen representative.
Terry Mines, citizen representative.
Mary Pocious, citizen representative.
Megan Platt, citizen representative. Susie Braithwaite, executive director of International Village BIA.
Kathy Druitt with the Downtown Hamilton BIA and the executive director.
Judy Lamb, I'm just sitting in for Glenn Norton, manager of urban renewal.
Okay, we can go right around. Mary, turn your mic off. Mary.
Marty Hazel, Senior Director of Parking and Bylaw Services for the city.
I'm Ken Leendertz. I'm the Director of Licensing.
Peter Wapshall, Public Works.
Kelly Barnett, Municipal Law Enforcement Coordinator.
Bill Fleming, Hamilton Police Service.
Scott Raston, I'm the police representative on the committee.
Julia Vanderlande Reese, Urban Design, City of Hamilton.
You two come down and introduce yourselves, please. Just in the top row. Paul, are you seeing?
Good morning. I'm Jillian Hendry, the Director of Housing Services Division. Lisa Pasternak, Solicitor, Legal Services.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. And we'll start with you, Madam Clerk. Lori, any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair. They're outlined in the yellow document available outside on the table. We have 4 added delegation requests. First one from Tom Cooper and John Mills with the Hamilton Roundtable for Poverty Reduction. Second from Maria Antello, Community Development Coordinator, Hamilton Legal Clinic. Third, Damon Starr. And fourth, Elizabeth McGuire with the Campaign for Adequate Welfare and Disability Benefits. We also have 6 added consent items being various pieces of correspondence. I won't list them all, but they are outlined in the changes to the agenda packages.
Thank you. And we should note for the record that it was through Paul Johnson's work in our neighborhood development division that you'll recall, task force, that we had suggested at the end of our last task force meeting that we invite Renee Wetzeller from Social Planning Research to join us to speak to the main issue on today's agenda. Renee is on holiday. We appreciated the input she did receive via email and so forth. So through, I believe it was Paul's office, we did request, it wasn't the other way around, that Tom Cooper show, and I just saw Tom. Thank you, Tom, for coming. And also Maria from Community Development, the Community Development Coordinator from the Hamilton Legal Clinic. So thank you for answering our call as a task force. We appreciate and look forward to your delegations in advance. May I have a motion to approve the agenda? Actually, before we amend, I think it would be probably prudent to have our, and it's up to the task force, if you'd like to maybe rearrange and sort of do it the way we would do it in a standing committee fashion and have the staff report first and then the delegations. I had an advance note with the clerks. Does that sound okay? So answering to the three-part motion that I'm sure everybody here is familiar with by now, we have Kelly Barnett and Scott Raskin with a presentation, and then we'll follow that up with our delegations. Well, I should, yes, please, can you move that? Moved by Kathy, seconded by Susan, all in favor. That's carried. And then a motion to approve the agenda as amended, moved by Kathy, seconded by Terry, all in favor. And that is carried. Any declarations of interest here today? Seeing none. We should probably approve the minutes too of May 26th. Moved by Megan, seconded by Mary Pochis, all in favor. That is carried. Also, sorry, Kelly, to be aware and be advised, our mics are having some issues. There's some feedback from the transmission, so Joey's advised that both cameras are hot audio. I thought I'd pass that along, and thank you, Joey Coleman. Okay, Kelly.
Testing. Good morning, through the chair, to the committee, to staff, and members of the public. I am here today to do a brief presentation based on a motion that was put forward at the May 26th Task Force on Cleanliness and Security in the Downtown Core. It had to do with enforcement of nuisance bylaws. The first part was that staff be directed to report on the feasibility of establishing a 3-year pilot project between municipal law enforcement and Hamilton Police Services that examines how to better enforce nuisance bylaws in the downtown core. And that staff include in the report the possibility of having a full-time municipal law enforcement officer work with the Hamilton Police Services officer on this project. And the third part was that staff include in the report information regarding a similar project that is in place in the city of Barrie. I'd like to start talking about what's going on in the city of Barrie. They created a nuisance bylaw and a project for a geographic area, their downtown, and it also included their public library property. It had an MLE officer cross-trained with a police officer, and they wore body armor. The first month was education and awareness to bring attention to the bylaw so people understood what was in place, and they issued lots of warnings. There was an MLE nuisance team, and that team also included parking meter staff. They worked independently in the core to increase visibility from 8 in the morning to 5 in the evening. There was very aggressive enforcement for the first few years, and this program ran from May till October. Then the program was scaled back to doing summer patrols. There was little to no fine recovery, and staff worked with agencies when necessary, when there were mental health or addiction issues. Because unlike Hamilton, they did not have a social navigator position. The bylaw itself covers many issues. The bylaw prohibits placing garbage on city or private property without permission, picking over, removing, scattering waste that's put out for collection, fouling of city property, selling or giving out products or services on city property without authorization, prohibited busking, blocking or impeding pedestrian passage on our sidewalks, riding bikes, skateboards, and other devices on any sidewalk within the downtown BIA, smoking on library property, boisterous and aggressive behavior on library property, and the use of profanity or offensive language, again, on library property. We were never asked to look at creating a new bylaw. The City of Hamilton already has existing bylaws in place that we can use to enforce, with the exception of the library properties. So I was at the May 26th meeting, and I participated in the conversation on the issues. And for what I recall, the issues were not nuisance. They were things like urinating in public. And we have a public nuisance bylaw already in place where both bylaw and both bylaw and Hamilton Police Services officers can enforce, and they do, and they can issue tickets. Loitering was another issue that was brought up. You can't prevent people from using public streets even if they choose to loiter. That's common law, and it's reinforced under the Municipal Act. There's statutory authority already in place to deal with those who impede pedestrian traffic or aggressively panhandle. We have those measures already in place under the Trespass to Property Act, the Safe Streets Act, the Criminal Code, and the Traffic Bylaw. And the third issue that was brought up at the meeting was criminal activity, using, selling drugs and alcohol, and assaults. Municipal law enforcement can't enforce the criminal code. We can't arrest people. So in summary, for us to be able to participate in a program such as Barry's, we would need additional staff, or we would need to change our enforcement priorities. The skills and duties our officers would be doing, including parking meter staff, would create budget impacts. Like Barry, we believe there would be little or no fine recovery. Loitering is not against the law, and we cannot enforce the criminal code. We cannot arrest or detain people. Those are police matters, and they need to be enforced by Hamilton Police Services. I will now ask Inspector Raston, who will finish the presentation.
That was a bit easier.
We'll ask questions of both following Scott's presentation, task force members, and I forgot to mention, Councillor Collins had a conflict. He's in licensing tribunal as a council representative there right next door. If it does wrap up early, which it rarely does, he would make his way over here.
Is it return? Thank you very much, Councillor Farr, members of the task force, members of the public. I'm here to talk about the action strategy. The action strategy started in 2010 when part of the concerns of this task force was we needed to increase police visibility and deal with the perception of safety and security in the downtown. The action strategy actually includes the action team, which is 40 officers that are dedicated to the downtown area as well as other areas that experience violent crime in the city. The bail compliance unit. Bail compliance unit is 2 officers that monitor people who have been released pre-trial for our most serious offenses, which will include aggravated assaults, homicides, sexual assaults. The mounted patrol unit. We have 5 officers and 5 mounts that actually patrol now for the majority of the downtown area. They started in 2011. And the Social Navigator program. The Social Navigator is a paramedic and a police officer and a worker from the Wesley's urban community to address the repeat offenders that we encounter, as well as people that are at risk of becoming repeat offenders, and mostly in the downtown area. I'm going to start with the crime stats over the last several years for the downtown BIA areas, which include International Village and downtown. As we can see in the trend, since the development of the action strategy, our violent crime and robberies have continued to decrease in the downtown area. A lot of this is due to the high visibility as well as the enforcement. If we look at some of the other stats for the downtown, assaults have continued to decrease. There has been a notable decrease in break and enters, but the theft from autos is down to 47. 20,000 people come into the downtown area every day to work, and over the whole year we only had 47 cars broken into. This is actually an incredible number. And if you look at the theft from autos, we've only had 17 autos stolen throughout the year in the downtown area. Once again, considering 20,000 people are coming down to our area. So over the last several years, we've seen a tremendous reduction in crime. Hamilton, this is in 2009 we did a study of violent crime areas, and this big red blob is where your highest concentration of violent crime is. We redid this study again in 2013, and as you can see, there is a dramatic decrease in the number of violent crimes, or the hotspots of violent crimes. The downtown area still is a focus of our attention, but as you can see, the overall crime, violent crime, has actually shrunk dramatically in Hamilton. In 2012, Hamilton led the whole country in reduction of violent crime, and this is Stats Canada reports. We led it with over a 19% decrease in violent crime. So obviously what we're doing is making an impact on this city. When Action isn't patrolling, this kind of shows you the mandate. They attend all the protests that are in the city. They do go to community events that have the potential to be large crowds, like the Heritage Days in Ancaster, Cactus Fest. So they are mobile throughout the city. They attend large sporting events like the TICAC Games, and they assist with canvassing if we do have a violent crime in an area. They actually come in to the area. They will talk to people. They'll try to get information on the crime. But it is a stabling effect for a neighborhood that has experienced a violent crime. When we're talking about PONs, or provincial offences notice, and this is a relation to the Barrie bylaw that we were saying, we can actually show there's actually no need to recreate or develop a new bylaw, because if you look at this is what action strategy the action officers are doing. Each year they issue 300 bicycle violations, or people riding bicycles on the street. They're issuing 170 public urination tickets. The Safe Streets Acts are your aggressive panhandling. I want to stress it is not illegal to panhandle. It is illegal to aggressively panhandle. And if you see, there's actually a decrease in the number of aggressive panhandling tickets that we are issuing, and some of that is a direct relationship to the Social Navigator program that I will talk to in a minute. The mounted patrol, they focus on actually making sure that they go to all the BIA areas in the city. But if you look at the two big blue spots, that is the downtown and International Village. So really 50% or 60 or 70% of their time is actually patrolling in the downtown area. Once again, during the day when we have the 20 and 30,000 people that are working in the downtown area. It works very well. It's high visibility, which is one of the focuses that this task force asked the police department, that we have to increase the visibility in the downtown. Not only do the 40 officers, but the mounted unit. A mounted officer you can see several blocks away as they come forward. And even if you did not see the officer or the horse, sometimes you see what they left behind, so you know the police were in your area. This is actually a presentation. A quick one just shows you the value of the horses. Did you want to? This is just, I'm not going to get into Hess Village at all on this presentation, but this just shows, this is a quiet night in Hess Village. Yeah, really quiet. This is, normally the crowds are much higher. If you can see up in the, I guess it's not working. Up in the top corner here, there's a bar that's starting, a disturbance is actually starting. You see a couple people, now you see people jumping the fence. Now you have about 30 or 35 people that are actually engaged into a fight. Here come the mounted unit right now. They do the first sweep. See, as they push the crowd back. The second horse now comes in. Now people are still trying to come back in. Some people are actually hitting the horses. And now once again the horses will do a second sweep to keep the crowds back, which now allows the officers to take control of the scene. Nobody was actually hurt in this disturbance, but without the use of the mounted and with 35 people involved in such a large brawl, they had the potential of some serious injuries happening there. Once again, the mounted spends most of their time patrolling in the entertainment districts when they're on night shifts. They do BIA visits. They do patrol our parks and trails, and they do attend some community events and parades. They only do community events when it is operational available. That means unfortunately, if you have the Boy Scout parade and you want the horses on a Saturday, we turn those requests down because the horses need to work on a Saturday night to be in the downtown entertainment district areas. Their goal is to be operational first. This slide here shows in 2007, this task force hired a consultant to come in to do a study of the downtown. Part of the study was that the person, the consultant asked people in the downtown area if they'd been a victim of crime. One of the things he classified as being a victim of crime is that you saw a homeless person or a drug person. It was a totally inappropriate question because that is not being a victim. But unfortunately for us, we actually had to redo the survey in 2011, so we actually asked the same questions. The results actually, because one of the concerns of the action strategy was that we would displace people who had the legal right to be downtown. It is not illegal to be homeless. But what the study showed us, that the people who actually said that they saw drunk people or loiterers and that actually went up. However, the crimes that were being committed for break-and-enters and theft from autos and that dramatically went down. So it shows you that the action strategy was not displacing people that are downtown, it was displacing or stopping the people who were downtown for the purpose of creating offenses. We also looked at, when we first started the strategy, that we were running into repeat offenders. I mean, the action officers were arresting the same people. We did a study of the top 20 people that we arrested in the first 6 months of the strategy, and we discovered that the average person in 6 months had 17 negative interactions with the police. So obviously the cycle of arrest, incarceration, release, arrest, incarceration is not the proper solution. This led us to develop that we needed to develop partnerships to break the reliance on the judicial system. We needed to create something where people can actually get the help they need. We discovered that a lot of the people we were arresting were connected to social services at one point, but that connection has fallen off. We partnered with through Paul Johnson's group, and Glenn Norton provided us original funding for $90,000 and the EMS to create what we call the Social Navigator program. Action officers who run into people continuously on a negative police contact, or have somebody who's at risk, a youth person hanging out suddenly downtown with in a drug area, we would actually then connect those persons to the navigator. The navigator would then do a evaluation, find out what the causes were for the person, whether it was addictions, whether it was financial, whether it was home issues or housing issues, and then connect those people back to the services in an attempt to reduce the negative contact, to get them out, to get them the proper help. If you look at the referrals that the Social Navigator refers to: mental health, income support, housing, withdrawal management, employment counseling, primary health. A lot of people just get connected with a doctor, and that seems to really help them out. We did an evaluation of the Social Navigator program in 2013, and what we discovered, we needed to look at people who had been in the program or out of the program for at least 6 months. So we could compare what they did 6 months prior to going into the program and 6 months after the program. And if you look at the criminal charges that people were involved, for those, there was a 42 people studied. They created, prior to going to the program 6 months, they had 63 criminal offenses they committed. Coming out of the program, they only committed 29. So there was a large reduction in criminal offenses. We didn't reduce or end criminal offenses because, once again, a lot of these people will come out of the program, back into the program. It is sometimes a long-term solution, but you do make headway, as we can see here. Now, if you look at the same 6 people, they had 103 mental health calls prior to going into the program. At the end, 8. Every one of those mental health calls means 2 officers have taken this person to St. Joseph's. They've been for 3 hours where they're looking at seeing a doctor, getting assessed before being released, or now that was gone down to 8. So in the area of mental health in the downtown area, we are making a dramatic increase. Effect. In 2014, we redid the study, and we discovered that 70% of people who, of the 91 that went through the program, had a decrease in negative police contact. However, there was a 30% increase. Some of them, 30%, had an increase in police contact. Once again, that made us look at the evaluation of the program. We realized that we need to do further follow-up on some of the people that are being discharged. We applied for a grant from the proceeds of crime, and they gave us a $50,000 or $100,000 grant for one person from the Wesley urban community to actually follow up the people who have gone through the Social Navigator program, to make sure that if they start to come back into it, we can interact quickly before it gets to be too serious. The other part gave us an officer who will work with the Social Navigator program to help them when people are referred to, make the connection to the paramedic, but also that person, when they're not working Social Navigator, they walk up and down King Street. That officer is a dedicated officer towards King Street, from the International to the downtown BIA area. The Social Navigator program was acknowledged as the best community policing program in the world last year. We beat out Hong Kong, and to get that award, it wasn't because it was a police program. It had to prove that there was partnerships with all the social agencies, with the city, with the BIAs. It really has to prove that you are taking the whole community and working on a problem together. Other enhancements that we've done through this committee, they asked us that we would enhance the CCTV monitoring. We average about 230 hours of monitoring the cameras a month. A year and a half ago, we didn't monitor them at all. This is done through our auxiliary program and our volunteers. We also have over 500 hours a month of our auxiliary officers patrolling with the action strategy. Once again, an auxiliary officer, they have basically the same uniform as an officer. They do not have the powers of arrest that an officer does, but they are trained in the powers of arrest and use of force legislation, and they are very valuable. But once again, it enhances our visibility in the downtown by an extra 500 hours. As we continue to work towards, we've used the PAVIS grant is actually $400,000 a year that we use to subsidize the action officers. The proceeds of crime grant, I told you, was the one we used for the enhancing of the social navigator program with the extra social worker, and we used the provincial civil remedies grant to actually purchase a new mobile CCTV camera that we can take to high crime areas, protests, or things where we need to enhance our camera system. As the action strategy has been part of working with economic development, but it's showing that we are making great steps. That in 2012, internationally, Hamilton's been said to be the best place to invest in Canada. But the action strategy also works on what we call special projects throughout the year. Hotspots will develop. Over the years, we've done, remember, Show World was one where we had criminal activity in the area. We had criminal activity over at 94 York. Every now and then we get criminal activity developing on the roof of Jackson Square. And presently we're looking at criminal activity around the Wright House. We will focus in on criminal activities, and we put what we call a problem-oriented policing project together. We've done that now for the Wright House. I'm not going to get into too much details of what's going on there, but I can tell you over the last month we've arrested 5 people. We've charged 4 people with trafficking in drugs, and we had 1 person that was actually causing mischief in front of the property. This is actually a good news story. That person was referred to the social navigator program. The person, when they went to court, as opposed to keeping them incarcerated, has been moved over to a mental health facility to actually receive training, which is a much better use than keeping the person incarcerated. Because once again, what we look through the social navigator program is to provide long-term solutions as opposed to short-term solutions. So in conclusion, violent crime continues to decrease. Bail compliance and the social navigator programs have been expanded. CCTV and social navigator have been enhanced. The mounted, we've moved actually the mounted to the Ancaster Fairgrounds for our stabling, which has actually decreased the travel time by about down to about 8% as opposed to 14%, which actually increases our times for patrolling in the downtown area. Okay, did anybody have any questions?
Sure. You have to refer to slides, but why don't we just try, you just go back to your mic over there and relax and sit down, and you too, Kelly. If we need to refer to slides, we'll address that at the appropriate time. And a reminder to our task force members that when you engage your microphone, ask your questions. Following that, disengage or turn it off, okay? Any questions from the task force members with respect to what we have just heard? I might pass the chair to you, Kathy, just briefly, just to clear up a few things. We've heard various incarnations of follow-up in the media with respect to where we were originally, and actually it would be helpful to have the original motion right now, Kelly, up on the screen, and for our gallery and media as well. The big question that I had was, and I'm seeing some signage in our gallery too, and I'm glad everybody's here, but nobody, to my recollection, and help me out, task force, asked for the creation of a new bylaw. Thank you. And so if we take a look at the slide, following a delegation, and we're going to hear from Irene again today, and we're glad Irene has joined us, as well as Randy, the security guard. We used the Barrie model as a reference tool. We didn't ask for the Barrie model, and maybe in part it's our fault as a task force with this 3-part motion and Part C that staff include in the report information regarding a similar project that is in place in the city of Barrie. We might have thrown in elements of a similar project, which we did, and that's okay. But we want to make sure, and for the record here today, that it was never discussed, never contemplated, and never formulated in any official motion that we create new laws or create new bylaws. We went and looked at elements of the city of Barrie's, I believe, 2004 implementation, and they did create a bylaw. In essence, in my research, they consolidated a whole bunch of existing bylaws into one. We weren't asking for that here, and so it's important to get that on the record. And I appreciate as well, Jillian Hendry is in attendance, and we may have questions, though she didn't present, with respect to some of the initiatives through Jillian's office with respect to the library and St. Pat's. And in fact, Jillian, maybe you could just give us a brief overview of how you and your folks, where you're from and who you represent, address some issues and what issues at the library in St. Pat's.
Through the chair, Housing Services Division covers a broad scope of services. It would be services for homeless people as well as social housing. So in certain situations, this type of issue comes to our attention. So a couple of years ago, I received an email, actually, from the chief librarian at the Central Library, very concerned, and that there were people, they called them homeless people, that may or may not be true, but people who were at the library who were causing a disturbance. They were, staff were feeling threatened, there were drugs that were being administered in the washrooms. People were generally feeling uncomfortable. So what we did is we called together a group. We called it the Day Services Task Force, and it was a variety of people. There were people from business, social service agencies, and what we did is we talked about this issue along with the library. And what came of this is that the library actually hired somebody. They hired a case manager through Wesley, and this case manager has been working with people at the library, as well as the staff, so that the staff have more of a comfort level with some of the behaviors, but also taking the opportunity to develop relationships with some of what you would have perhaps called troublemakers in the library. It was actually the Hamilton Library Board that covered the cost of this caseworker, and so now the Hamilton Library, as well as Wesley, has a partnership, and I would say that it is going very well. Staff are feeling a lot more comfortable, and I've got to give credit to the library in that they are a very inclusive organization and work their best to make everybody feel comfortable in coming to the library.
Through you, Chair, would you suggest that the library's initiative is very similar to the one we've had since 2009, Social Navigator, or on a broader base, of course?
There are certainly similarities to that, Councillor. I would say that it's about developing relationships. It is generally, there's certainly a place for police if there are criminal activities involved, and that doesn't preclude the police taking steps that they should be taking, as well as bylaw enforcement. But for the most part, it is getting to know the individuals and ensuring that the individuals get the services that they deserve.
Which is very similar to Social Navigator. Lisa Pasternak's from legal and knows every bylaw in the city of Hamilton inside out. And I think it's important, task force, I'm sure you will agree, that we get some clarity here as well due to certain comments and assumptions that were fair enough since last we met. As we can focus now on, first of all, through the chair, Lisa, do we have anything with reference to our nuisance bylaws in Hamilton that differs or is more authoritative or aggressive than any other community our size or otherwise? Or are they pretty standard nuisance bylaws here in Hamilton?
Through the chair, we have
very similar set of bylaws. In our case, we haven't consolidated, but in what they cover, as the presenters indicated to you, as other municipalities. The particular nuisance bylaw that deals with urination and some other issues is in, I haven't updated it recently, but it's perhaps in half a dozen municipalities, and that number is increasing. So in that particular bylaw, Hamilton was one of the first to institute.
What other elements fall under our nuisance bylaw that you can recollect through you, Chair?
The particular public nuisance bylaw deals with also the knocking over of mailboxes or garbage containers or those types of things on the sidewalk. But the other type nuisance things are solid waste collection bylaw, deals with the disruption of solid waste put out for collection. We have littering that is covered under our yard maintenance bylaw. So all of those items, as was indicated, are taken up. Some of them are with provincial or the criminal code where they're taken up, but they're covered.
Aggressive panhandling, where does that fall?
That's the safe streets legislation provincially.
Okay, through you, Chair, then to Kelly or Scott on the safe streets legislation. Is there anything that this task force has addressed or is looking to address through our three-part motion that falls under this provincial legislation?
I think, I think the task force was looking at aggressive panhandling as part of it. And as I pointed out earlier, it's stuff that we already do enforce. Once again, it's the knocking over mailboxes, and that can actually be either a criminal charge of mischief or you could go with the bylaw.
And we heard a great deal of the delegation that led to this three-part motion from the representatives from the Right House spoke of alleged assaults, reported assaults, drug use, drug dealing. That's day-to-day for Hamilton Police, and that falls under the criminal code, I would suspect.
Yeah, that would be for the criminal offenses. That is our responsibility. By law cannot lay those type of charges. So we, once again, when we do get the complaints, we put a project together to address a hotspot that may develop, but also the action officers daily are, in their patrols, arresting people for drugs or occasional assault.
Okay, so to sum up, and thanks for Lori, again, this is where our conversation ended at our last task force meeting about a month and a half ago. And we're looking for that staff be directed to report on the feasibility of establishing a 3-year pilot between MLE and HBS that examines how to better enforce the bylaws. And we've had good breakdowns in the presentation and more definition following the presentation, dealing with nuisance complaints in the downtown core. Part A, I would suggest, is something we can think about as we ask our questions, deals with resource issues, which we deal with on a regular basis in every department across the city of Hamilton, at least in the last 4 years I've been around. And what we heard essentially was, if you want us to investigate that, give us a formal request and we will. And so we'll be able to establish where that has gotten us to this point, where we may need to go if we need to formalize another motion prior to the end of this meeting. The second part B, that staff include in the report the possibility of having a full-time municipal law enforcement and full-time Hamilton Police Services officer to participate in a pilot project. That was in reference to how Barrie had established the handling or enforcement of their consolidated bylaw. And I'm not certain, did we, through you, Chair, get an answer as to where we would be with the answer to Part B today, whether it's Scott or Kelly or both on this, or even Marty Hazel?
Through the chair, it's a resource issue, and to have a full-time municipal law enforcement officer, we would need to either have additional staff, or we would need to look at our enforcement priorities and realign them. But they are council-approved priorities.
Right. Sorry, that wasn't your report. Okay, so we didn't get a definitive that we have reallocated, and so we'd have to make it a council priority. Scott?
And from a policing point of view on that, I think we already have the high visibility that Barrie was seeking. Barrie was trying to, in a way, take their parking officers and making them look more like police officers to increase the visibility. For us, we have a dedicated officer that walks King Street now already. You have 40 officers plus a mounted unit. We have the visibility that Barrie didn't have. So if you look at what we've done it 10 times better for the most part.
And a highly successful and internationally recognized social navigator program, which I don't think should be overlooked in any way, shape, or form. Okay, and then finally, where the confusion maybe lies, that we include in the report information regarding a similar project that is in place in Barrie, and that was highlighted. There was a list there that included things like busking. I spent 40 minutes on the phone with a busker soon after our first meeting. We have, in fact, Marty Hazel can attest through you, Chair, to Marty, something completely different and extremely inclusive as it relates to street performances here in Hamilton, and it's something that we resolved this term of council. Marty?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the Community Emergency Service Committee addressed the issue of busking comprehensively and decided to allow it, I believe, in strategic locations. So we do have a policy on that in Hamilton.
And on the list, certainly, as referenced by Kelly, and thank you for pointing out, this is just some of the elements that Barrie consolidated. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks like 5 bullets that this task force didn't discuss, but the fouling of city property in Barrie, certainly that's something that you investigated there, reported back to us, thank you. The placing of garbage on city streets, private property without permission, blocking or impeding pedestrian passage on sidewalks, as I recollect, that was discussed. Believe, right, that's about it. Yep, that's about it. And thank you, Kelly, for the reference. So, with that, I just wanted to clear some things up. We do have delegations coming, some invited. We appreciate. We want to get them down here as soon as possible. But following staff presentations, generally the committee or task force in this case would have questions for clarity, and we can do that now. So, I will take the chair back. Kathy, your questions.
Mr. Chair, I just wondered if I could ask legal or Kelly from bylaw about the definition of the loitering issue that we talked about. You mentioned that loitering is not against the law. Do other municipalities have something similar in terms of a loitering issue? And the one particular bylaw requirement in Barrie's instance is the blocking and impeding of pedestrian passage on sidewalks, which is clearly what is happening in the stretch between James and Houston, where you've got people sitting on the sidewalk for long periods of time. You've got people sleeping on the sidewalk. So I'm just wondering if that definition of loitering is not clear.
Through the chair, other municipalities enforce impeding pedestrian traffic in the same manner as Hamilton. They don't have a loitering bylaw, or if they do, it is for impeding traffic. And loitering is not against the law, and if people can have passage through, there's no violations. Nothing to enforce. They're allowed to be on the sidewalk.
Anybody else? Okay. All right, we have before us 4 delegations, and I think maybe more than that. This is the added delegations. I should ask for a motion to approve the new 4 delegations, moved by Terry and seconded by John. All in favor? That's carried. Where do you have my delegations, Lori? Oh, okay. Yep. We want to move items 5.1 through 5.9. This is the correspondence. Any discussion before we move them? Have you had an opportunity to read them? Gives you a good, well-rounded take on what folks have commented on since, and it also highlights in some cases some of this correspondence. Much of it emails to my office or our clerk, and I believe many were CC'd. Some of the misconceptions either rightly or wrongly, fairly or unfairly, based on our last task force and cleanliness security meeting. So a motion to receive the items 5.1 through 5.9. Thank you, Kathy. Seconded by Mary. All in favor? That is carried. Much appreciated. All those who dialogued with us through email or otherwise. Okay, let's hear from the delegations. We'll call on Irene Hubar from Aragon Properties, our first delegation.
Councillor Farr, members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen in the gallery. I just want to make one thing specifically clear. I never mentioned homelessness or poverty, ever. The people who were demonstrating outside of my building this morning with homeless placards and signs, I have never seen these people before. So that was not my issue, and I think I made that very clear when I came to the committee on May the 26th. So how this all came back on my lap, I'm sorry. That was not why I was here. My concern is the trafficking of drugs blatantly, all day long, every day, people purchasing drugs, pedophiles, that I've been notified by the police that are sitting there with children on their laps. I am an immigrant to this country too. Talk about humble backgrounds. I'm an example of a humble background. But my concern is the fact that as part of my job, and I've been in property management for 48 years in Hamilton, my job is to lease the space in the Right House. And I am unable to do that because of the situation constantly at the front of our building. We just had, 2 weeks ago, an international firm here looking for 20,000 square feet. They have over 600 offices in every country imaginable. They came through, and you'll see it in the package. Our real estate agent got back to me last Thursday and said, Irene, I'm sorry you're not on the short list, because these people could not believe what was going on at the front of your building, and they wouldn't entertain anyone coming here. They've been in countries like India, China, Pakistan, where poverty is rampant, and they said it was nothing compared to this. This is absolutely unacceptable. And you can get a hold of our agent if you want to confirm what I've just said, because I'm telling you, it's at the point now where this is not my problem or an Aragon problem. This is a city problem. And that's why I came here on the 26th of May, and I'm waiting for this action team or something. We've got a fine young man, Trevor Holmes. He's an action fellow. He is doing everything and anything he can. He comes into my office probably 3 or 4 times a week. And he's just about ready to pull his hair out. We just had a gentleman last week running around the front of the building with an axe hanging from his belt. Trevor was right there. I got onto the email, phoned him right away, got in touch with him. He arrested the kid. The kid was gone. Randy will confirm he was back on the street in the afternoon. Like, I can't have this. I'm trying to do a job. I'm trying to fill up that building. We had to try and play some music to try and discourage people. I've had 2 visits already from bylaw. Turn off your music. I was told to turn it on. Turn it off. Like, and then I had a lady, a couple of weeks ago. She called my office and she said, Irene, that sign you've got on the front of the building, you can't smoke within 90 meters. Take it down. I said, what are you talking about? I said, we used to have a sign up there that said no smoking within 25 meters. The people from the health department told me, oh no, you have to take that down. I said, well, I'm not taking it down. People are standing right in the doorway. She said, well, I used to work in your building and I worked for the health department, so I'm telling you, you have to take it down. I said, oh, just a second. When the health department was in the building, it was okay to have the sign, but now that you're not here, you're telling me I have to take it down because I had more complaints from people who work for the city health department walking down saying, Irene, do something because I'm walking through that smoke and it's in my hair and it's on my clothes and da-da-da-da-da. So, you know what? Every time you try to do something proactive, you get cut off one way or another. If it's not someone complaining about the music, it's someone complaining about the bylaws. Now that there's no smoking in the park, people are standing there. I had a girl, and Jason will tell you, he moved the mailbox for us because I saw a girl dumping her Tim Horton coffee right in the mailbox. So we moved that because they were literally using that as a coffee table. Now something has to happen here, otherwise, and I've said it before, that building and that owner, on his behalf, I probably spent in the last 3 years at least $1 million. It's probably one of the most beautiful heritage buildings in the downtown. And if something doesn't happen, I don't know what he's going to do. Because you can't continue to pump money into a place when you're getting absolutely no support and no help. It has to change. Something has to happen. And I don't know, these people up here, that's fine. I have no cross to bear with you. My aggravation is the criminal activity, and it's always been that. Nothing else. And now I'm getting personally harassed? Come on. This is not my fight. But I'm telling you, I am sick to death of it. And the public good and public safety is more important and overrides anyone's human rights. The fact that people, Kathy Druitt sent me an email and a photograph. She tried to get down the middle of the sidewalk at 2:30 in the afternoon. It's completely blocked. And it's that block of that section of the sidewalk. Scott Raston used to be our action officer. He was in my office all the time. But it's getting worse. It's not getting better. And I'm anxious to find out what this 3-year task force or plan is to get this thing resolved, because it can't stay. I mean, this is ridiculous. I've been spit on, Randy's been assaulted, you all know that. 6 weeks later, here we are, we're still talking about it. What's going to happen? Let's put some teeth in the dog here. Something has to change. I don't think it's that difficult. I'm not out here to harass anyone. I just want the city clean, especially the downtown. How much more downtown can you be? That is the downtown. Right across from the park. Right in front of a beautiful heritage building. Do something. Do something now. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is Randy. He's the White House security guard, and he's been around for
5 years.
5 years.
Okay, I'm pretty well along the same page. It's got nothing to do with homelessness or anything like that. It's these usual ones, as I call them. Like even these protesters, they were down on Saturday. They weren't in front of the doors. They weren't up against the building. They didn't impede the public traffic. It's these ones, we call them the usual, and I'm tired of people saying police aren't doing their job and everything else. I've seen them take the worst of the worst, all their time and effort off the street, and the court system lets them right back out with no conditions. We have the horses, they came up, and it's great what they're doing, but when the court system keeps letting them right back out, it's not the homelessness and the panhandlers and everything else I'm having the problem with. It's a group of the usuals that sit out there all day long. And then when they congregate and where people can't walk by, and if somebody says something to them, they go absolutely ballistic on people. And it's just that's what has to stop. Okay? Thank you.
Any questions from the task force?
I'd just like to add one thing, and it's in your package. I have tenants now, and you'll read it for yourself. I have tenants, existing tenants now, in your package, who are threatening to leave because of what's going on. They want something done. They want to know from me what's going to happen. Something concrete as far as the solution is concerned. Because, for example, the National Academy of Health and Business, they have young women in there doing dental hygienist programs. And their executive director said, Irene, they're afraid to go outside. The The language out there is disgusting, but they're afraid to go out on the sidewalk or come into the building. And that's ridiculous. That can't happen. So for the tenants that I do have, we better make sure we're able to keep them. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Irene, just for clarity here, and this is really important, and this is why, and I guess it was after you had left, and we do appreciate you came in and offered your delegation in May, and we're here. I think you came to the appropriate subcommittee of council, the Cleanliness and Security subcommittee. You began your delegation and referenced you've no issue with poverty and no issue with homelessness, and certainly the bulk of your presentation 6 weeks ago focused on criminal behavior, criminal activity, assaults, alleged assaults. Randy's ejected people from inside the building doing drugs or selling drugs. You've witnessed the claim is and called in whenever and wherever feasible, drug use, drug sales, public urination you spoke of. These are the items that are of concern to you, but you also referenced just now foul language, smoking being an issue, and an issue you had with our health department. So some of what you've referenced, sum up, does kind of, as elaborated on by people like Jillian and our legal, Lisa and Kelly in her presentation, we don't, it's not a crime, and you're aware. I just want to be clear that you're aware foul language or smoking or a public gathering is not a crime. You are focusing on those who are gathering, who are
conducting
involved
criminal
or conducting in criminal activities.
Absolutely.
Okay. Anybody else for Irene while she's here?
No, I was just going to say, as far as any panhandling issues and whatever, that's up to the police to handle. That's not my problem. That's not my issue. My issue is the drug dealers who are there from 10:30 in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning, till 6 o'clock at night. So, like I said before, they're making a lot more money than you and I. Otherwise, why would they be there? I mean, it's blatant all day. And I think Scott could attest to that because he worked downtown with me for a number of years.
Through the chair to Irene, you referenced Trevor. He's great. He's a Hamilton police officer.
Trevor Holmes, yeah.
He regularly visits you. You said 4 times a week. You said also that he's pulling his hair out, what limited hair he has.
Yeah.
Through the chair, why is he pulling his hair out, just so we can be very clear?
Well, he's frustrated. For example, he'll make an arrest. Goes over to the Central. He says, I'm there for 2-3 hours filling out papers. For example, the fellow with the hatchet. Got him arrested, filled out all the paperwork. So when he's over at the police station filling out papers for 2 or 3 hours, he's not downtown. He's not patrolling, he's not doing his job. I've never seen anyone else to replace him that's as active as he is. And then the afternoon, the fellow with the hatchet's right back on the street. Well, there's something wrong with that. That shouldn't happen. And I'm not saying that's Hamilton Police Services. Maybe that's something we have to talk to the courts about. I asked Trevor, and I said to him, what's going on? He goes, well, it's not the police. I guess he appeared in front of a JP, and he said, no. Well, people don't run around downtown with a hatchet hanging off their belts. That's ridiculous.
Ultimately, through the chair, you understand from your first delegation to what we have as a report back from staff that the primary or the prevalent response and question here is resources. And Trevor has obviously, spending 3 hours at Central Station rather than on the streets enforcing. You're referencing then through the chair, and you understand that there's this resource issue, and hence the bylaw, or not a bylaw, the motion.
Yes, I understand that, but like I say, he can't be 2 places at once.
Yeah. Social navigator, Irene, was referenced, and as it relates to your specific corner of our downtown, through the chair, Was it you? Were we together at a recent BIA meeting, or was it the task force? My recollection is that, and unfortunately this is the case, as successful as it is, there are some who, like the young person with the hatchet, care not to be navigated. We do have the percentage there, and I think it was 30% or so, do not wish to go through the social navigator system. Was there a few of the folks that you're specific, as Randy calls them, the usuals, that are among those who are not interested in being navigated and helped?
No. The usuals are the drug dealers. Like there's an individual who sits on the sidewalk almost every day, Richard and Tony. They sit there cross-legged at the front, and somebody will buy them a coffee or a muffin or something, and he'll sit there actually and he'll rock back and forth. He has Tourette's or some other health issues. And if we ask him, or Randy will ask him, Richard, please move away. Oh, okay, and he'll go. Not a problem. There are obviously mental health issues, and I understand that. But the people who are there, the people that I'm having issues with are definitely not mental health issues. These people are running a business. They're running a business.
Of a criminal nature.
Through
you, Chair, to Scott, specific to a social navigator as it relates to this corner. Anything you can report?
I can give you two things. As I mentioned earlier, we are working on a problem-oriented policing project to deal with the drug dealing. I'm not going to get into too much details what we're doing on that. As opposed to the social navigator program, also the person that we've been referring to with the hatchet actually has been referred to the program, and this is the person who is now seeking, he's been admitted to hospital for psychiatric help, so he is not out in the street anymore. But we went back to courts again with the social navigator, made a plea to the Justice of the Peace, who then said, yes, this is better served not just doing the release again, let's get the person with the proper care. And part three, as part of the problem-oriented policing, we are going to do a SEPTED audit of that, which is crime prevention through environmental design. Sometimes you have to take a wider approach to your problem solving. We are going to have our crime prevention experts look at that, and they can address areas, why are people choosing this corner for drug dealing as opposed to. So you take the project is ongoing, but it is a multifaceted project.
Through the chair to you, Irene, you've heard three answers. Is there anything satisfactory there? Understanding, Irene, that there's more that you've mentioned in your delegation that you'd like to see and faster, but the problem-oriented policing, for example, is a direct result of the concerns you expressed before even, I believe, Scott, if I'm not mistaken, your delegation in May. Does this in some ways appease you as it relates to the criminal activity that you're focused on? Through you, Chair.
I would be interested in speaking to Scott on a one-to-one and find out exactly what they're working on. I've just spent $7,000 on new cameras for the front of the building, and I've just ran off one of those discs for Trevor because he asked me if certain individuals were there and he wanted a copy off of our security system. So, we're doing what we can. And it's not a cheap endeavor, believe me, but I certainly would be interested in talking with you, Scott, to find out exactly what the game plan is, because this has to be addressed. Like I said, it's getting worse, and it can't continue. So,
okay. Thank you. Is there anything else, given the...
No, I don't think...
The main thing is the profile. Like the one day we had Mr. Neal down there. He's
right into the mic, Randy, please.
We had an officer down there one day, Mr. Neal. I believe he did a foot patrol on the Barton Street, and just with him being visible down there, these usuals aren't hanging around.
Right, so that gets us back to the prevalent question.
The social navigator program and everything, it's great. I've seen it do wonders with a lot of these kids. It's really good, but it's these usuals. And it's like when Ed and Barron, they'll bring the horses up. You'll get the people that you want hanging around there. You'll have kids that has never seen a horse before. The officers will take the time, show them how to pet the horse, where they can pet the horse and everything else, but they can't spend their whole shift there. And then as soon as police services leave, these usuals are right back in front of them.
Okay, and again, to be clear, when you say these people or the usuals through the chair, you're talking about the ones that you have identified or even reported to the police who are engaged in criminal activity.
I've seen them arrested so many times over the past 5 years, it's incredible.
Thank you. Move to receive, anybody else with questions? Move to receive the delegation, moved by Kathy, seconded by John. All in favor? Carried. Thank you both for coming. Tom Cooper, I believe you're next. Tom will be joined by John Mills. We welcome Tom back to Council Chambers.
Thank you, Councillor Farr, and good morning to the task force. I'm director of the Hamilton Roundtable for Poverty Reduction. We were asked to present this morning, and I think we wanted to present a little bit of a different perspective on this issue, and I certainly understand and sympathize with what's been said this morning. Inspector Raston indicated that crime is falling in the downtown, and certainly congratulations to Hamilton Police Services, congratulations to the Social Navigator, who's working with community groups to make things better and to provide opportunities, I think. We have groups here today that are working every single day with people who are in vulnerable situations. For instance, from Mental Health Rights Coalition is here. Erica Morrison from the Street Youth Planning Collaborative unfortunately just had to leave. But there's so many great organizations working in the community to try to make a difference. And just to echo what Jillian has already talked about, I think the approach that Hamilton Public Library has taken over the last couple of years in looking at how we can make facilities in Hamilton more inclusive is really important. Because at the end of the day, we here in Hamilton still have a significant poverty problem. There are many people who face social exclusion. We're living in a deeply unequal society, and that presents problems. That presents problems in terms of unemployment, opportunities, and whether it is individuals living in residential care facilities who simply don't have any resources to spend money during the day and have nowhere to go. They don't have any day programs often and are often forced out of their homes to wander the streets. Whether it's the limited opportunities that youth face in terms of employment, and we know the youth unemployment rate today is 2 times, 3 times higher than it is for the general population. And for every job seeker, for every job out there, there are at least 7 job seekers today. One of the exciting things we're working on at the Hamilton Roundtable for Poverty Reduction is around shifting public attitudes about poverty. And we've developed through Celeste Lickerich's leadership as our coordinator, a speakers bureau called Speak Now Hamilton. John Mills is a member of the Roundtable and a member of that speakers bureau, and he wants to talk to you a little bit today about his perspective on this issue. So I'd like to invite John up now.
Thank you, Tom. Tom's covered off a lot of what I really wanted to say. I've been living on the low end of the economic spectrum for a few years now after losing my job in IT. And there is an enormous amount of social isolationism when you fall into poverty. What most of the people on the streets are doing is trying to avoid mental health issues by becoming part of some kind of inclusion in society. Unfortunately, it doesn't allow, there is not a lot of space for them to be unless they can afford to buy something. You can't go to a bar and just sit around and talk with your friends. You can't go to a coffee shop and do that. You have to find some place to be. If you happen to smoke, you can't even go to a park anymore. I understand the problems of the businesses in the downtown core trying to overcome the crime. That is a big issue. But when people who are in the social isolation don't have a place to live, don't have a place to invite people over, they can't afford to feed themselves, much less have friends over for dinner or whatever, they end up downtown. And those who are buying the drugs are as much a problem as the people selling. They are trying to escape in their own way. And that is a form of escape which they really can't afford, but it is one of the few things that they can do that is only sort of controlled. So I think the biggest part of the problem, austerity, is finally catching up to us. This is a result of it. No jobs, no money in the economy. social isolationism, substandard housing. I don't know where we go. Obviously, much of this is outside this task force's mandate, but it is something that I think has to be brought forward continually to City Hall and to the province, and much more than ever the federal government. Thanks very much.
Okay, any questions, committee? Yes, Kathy.
I just wondered if you could elaborate a little bit on the no-day programs available in Hamilton. Where did we used to have some, or what do they look like in other communities?
Hamilton has a vibrant residential care facility community, but residential care facilities are home to some of the most vulnerable members of our community, often individuals with mental health challenges or sometimes physical disabilities, acquired brain injuries. And generally they are private operators operating homes. Some residential care facilities are operated by nonprofits and government offices. Generally, though, there aren't very many day programs available for this population, and one of the real sad things I've seen in visiting residential care facilities is just going into one, seeing a group of people sitting on couches watching The Price is Right, and sort of seeing that day after day. I think for us as a community, we need to do a little bit of a better job in terms of looking at what those opportunities are to engage people who live in residential care facilities, and maybe providing some educational opportunities or social engagement opportunities. There are some. I think much more needs to be done. At the end of the day, though, this really comes down to the need for additional resources from senior levels of government, the provincial government particularly, through the personal needs allowance. Although it's been increased a little bit, it certainly isn't enough to meet their daily needs and to ensure that social inclusion that's so important for all of us in community.
So, Tom, how would you recommend then, through you to the chair, would you suggest that City Council's role is to capitalize on as much provincial and federal funding as possible to replace some of those day programs that are missing in our community?
I believe that would be a good approach, and certainly engaging senior levels of government about this issue is very important. Ensuring that population, those very important individuals, have hope for their future as well, and whether it's educational opportunities or just engaging them in community activities, it's really important. And I think there are some creative ways we can look at doing that.
Thank you, Tom. So, Mr. Chair, I just wondered if perhaps through you and our other councillor that's here, that isn't here, could we perhaps get an update as to what is happening with respect to some of that pushback that our social agencies are requesting of more funding for day programs?
You always ask great questions, Kathy, and actually we did invite Jillian Hendry to provide a verbal update as to at least where we're at and where we're looking to go, and I actually probably just let you elaborate on the good question asked by our committee member.
Through the chair, I'm hoping I can take the opportunity to provide you with a little bit of information about our pilot at St. Patrick's as well, which fits in very well with what Tom described. There was, and probably at a smaller scale, there is certainly an issue in the neighborhood of St. Patrick's Church in that there was very aggressive panhandling. And so, similar to the situation at the Hamilton Public Library, Housing Services Division was invited to find some solutions and explore what the issue was. In this case, we took a little bit of a different approach, given that it was a different situation. And the first thing that we did is we made an effort to find out who in fact were the individuals who were panhandling. And what we did is case conferencing in that case to really get a sense of what was going on with these individuals. On top of that, what we are doing, we're going to be exploring and bringing to our committee, hopefully in the near future, a pilot project. And what this is the individuals were in fact residents in residential care facilities in the area of St. Patrick's Church. So what we hope to do is to implement a pilot where there will be a recreation type pilot, where there will be the opportunity for the individuals at 4 or 5 RCF's residential care facilities to be involved in the community and find out what they can be doing to improve their quality of life. As far as day services go in the city, they can be called drop-in centers, they can be called a variety of things. It's usually a place where people go where they aren't necessarily programmed, where they have the opportunity to go and hang out, as John mentioned, a place where people can just go and have a cup of coffee. And actually, day services, we just did a review of that. We hired a consultant, and a report is coming out just on that topic. And we did an inventory of day services in the city, and there are many, whether it be mental health for newcomers, so on and so forth. There's a very informal network of drop-in type programs, as well as some formal ones, whether it be through Canadian Mental Health, etc. The city does not fund that type of program to any extent. We do get funding, provincial and federal funding, through the Federal Homelessness Partnering Strategy, as well as that's the Community Homelessness Prevention Initiative. But I think that Councillor Farr will agree that the need for programs in Hamilton certainly outweighs the available funding. So we're going to explore that further, but I can't say that I have any announcement as far as further funding at this point in time.
And with that, and as Chair of Emergency Community Services, I can pass along anything from this task force. That would be to your question. That would be the appropriate committee to do so, right? Yeah.
So just one follow-up question then, Mr. Chair, and that is, we are not assuming, though, that many of these people who are doing the drug deals are homeless. Right. So I'm also suggesting that perhaps through Scott Raston and the Hamilton Police Services, that the swinging door, if you will, of arrests and back out on the street, be reviewed as part of that initiative to try and look at the POP project in downtown.
To you, Mr. Chair, the POP project we have control over, as you call it, the swinging door, is not as much, we don't have much control. That is the judicial system. We are part of the judicial system, but when it comes to the choice of release or incarceration, that belongs to the judges, the JPs. You know.
It's my understanding, though, they just begun recently here in Hamilton from the judicial system as a recourse, as a punishment, I guess, for lack of a better term, on a conviction. They've directed certain individuals to social navigator. I bring it back up because we shouldn't lose sight of that, right?
Yes, and that's pre-charge. I want to pre-charge that, and it has been a tremendous success story for the social navigator program that the courts have bought in and are using that. Once again, the social navigator program, our goal is to find long-term solutions to stop the need for the person to be drug dealing or involved in that type of activity. But once again, it is a slow process.
And a wedge for the swinging door. Okay. Kathy, thank you. Can you take the chair? John, I just have a quick question. I want to get to the crux of this. There's a whole point to this task force inviting initially Renee. So glad Tom could make it. Maria's next. And I'm glad you came up. You're really pinpointing on what you're saying as it relates to drugs. Drug use, you said sort of a way to control it, something that folks can control. It is an addiction. I don't need to tell anybody in this room. It's also a criminal activity, and that was the focus and the reference by the delegate from the Right House on May 26th. You're not in any way condoning this behavior or activity in a public place. You just identified it in your. Can you just be clear on that? It's not something that you're condoning, criminal activity?
I'm not condoning it in any place, most especially not in a public place. I'm just saying that there are so few avenues of escaping the stress and the negativity of poverty that almost any avenue to escape will be taken, and if you get involved with addictive drugs, then it's not an escape so much as now you're trapped in another sphere. So no, I'm not condoning drug use or especially selling by any stretch.
Okay, thanks. And I appreciated the comment when you first stepped up to the microphone that in a way when folks of similar ilk, poverty, is something they share, they tend, like anybody else, to gather together. And I completely understand where you're coming from on that point.
When you are in poverty, your opportunity to interact with any other economic level is pretty much nil. So you are definitely forced to interact with mentally ill people. And poverty does lead to mental illness. That's been proven over and over in medical studies. And certainly those that are living in poverty, if they haven't got a mental problem, are certainly well on their way to one. And that's something that's inevitable, that is part of the necessity of addressing the issue.
Okay, good, thank you. And thank you both. Move to receive the delegation. Moved by Susie, seconded by Megan. All in favor? Carried. Very much appreciate the time and answering our request. Maria, thank you. Maria Antono's the Community Development Coordinator with the Hamilton Legal Clinic.
Good morning, Councillor Farr, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. As you know, I do community development at the Hamilton Legal Clinic, and a good number of people that we serve are people that are marginalized or of low income. I do not want to dwell on what was already said. I do fully support what Comrade Tom Cooper and John Mills just said. A lot of folks in this room are working together with a lot of social issues occurring in our city. And I don't think anybody in this room is against being a diverse city, an inclusive city, and a city where people can belong, and a city where we accept the people that live. And whether it's on the streets or not on the streets, we need to include and accept the people that live in this city. And we need to support them. What really sort of touched me today, and this is something that I think a lot of folks think about, is a lot of the stereotypes that surround the people that live in poverty or that are homeless or that have mental health issues. And I'm very aware that Ms. Huber is not talking about those people, but I do want to say that we do need to shift our attitudes. I am very concerned when we talk about us and them. It's not about us and them. It's not the city problem, Ms. Hubers. It's our problem what's happening in this city. We cannot dump issues on the city that if it's affecting us, we need to take the stand and we need to be part of the solution. And part of the solution is not complaining. I really have to support the initiatives that Ms. Hendry talked about. The Date Services Task Force. There's a lot of other initiatives in the city that include the voice of the people we're talking about. Like I said, it's not about us, it's not about them, it's about the city and how we can be part of the solutions. I wish that we look at ourselves as equal, with equal opportunities. And if those opportunities don't exist, what are we doing to change that? I have been in other cities where public spaces and private spaces were open to people, to vulnerable people, and it works. So I think that that's about what I want to say today. I want to say that we need to shift our attitudes. People are not poor because they want to. People are not the way they are because they created that situation for them. It's the lack of opportunities that people have in the city, and I think everybody in this room wants to live in a city where we can raise our children, but we need to be part not only of complaining, but being part of the solution. Thank you.
Thanks, Marianne. Anybody? Pass the chair. Just to be clear, and I asked this of the last delegate, we're trying to maintain a focus as it relates to the three-part motion and criminal activity. You're not suggesting we do anything other than try to address the criminal activity that's been noted, the public urination, the alleged assaults, the reported assaults, and other issues, drugs-related issues. So you're not condoning that activity?
Not at all, Jason Farr. Like I said, we want a city where we can live, play, and work. Where are the jobs? Where are the day programs? And I think if we came and sort of intertwined the issues, it's basically because they sort of happen hand in hand, right? Now, nobody condones crime. We want to live in a city where we are crime-free, right?
But in your view, and you hit on the point here, the two are related through you, Chair, which is why we invited you in the first place and Tom in the first place. That's your view.
My view is what? Could you repeat that?
The two are related. That the crimes that are referenced and that the delegate who initially came before us, May 26th, from
my view is that
wants to focus on is, in your view, related to the poverty issue through you, Chair.
My view, I want to be clear here, is that this city, we cannot dissect issues, right? We can't dissect and separate issues. If good things are happening in the city, fine. But if negative things are happening in the city, we have to deal with them in a holistic way. I do not condone crime or illicit activity, right? But I don't know what people that are very concerned about this have been doing, besides calling the police or besides blaming and putting this issue to the city or just to the police or just to the criminal system. I want to know what people do in their daily lives. What do they do to be part of the solution? So what I want to say here, everybody is part of the solution, right? If you're affected, if something bothers you, you can't come to the city hall and say it's your problem. It's everybody's problem.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Marie. Okay, move to receive the delegation. Moved by Terry, seconded by Megan. All in favor? It's carried. We do have now delegation requests. This one's from Damon Starr respecting our bylaw. There is no bylaw request, just to be clear, on enforcement of our bylaw in the downtown core, or bylaws. Damon?
Thank you, Councillor Farr, for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I know that the committee has on their behalf, but regardless, I must say I'm sort of overwhelmed by the amount of information that was clarified today. So if I may start with that, because there was a complete misconception, and I believe it started here in May. So you know, to be fair, both to you and to the media, points B and C, I would suggest you should be rectified and clarified within this task force, so that it doesn't get out into the public realm in that form. Because what the suggestion was is that we were taking a step towards Barry's initiative, as Councillor Farr suggested. And I understand now, sitting here today, both of the officers here, which is fantastic, to hear about the Social Navigator program and those things, that yes, we do get the information, and I'm just a normal citizen. And yes, I do hear it, but I don't understand it. So the information that comes out in this form, where it's brought forward as A, B, and C, definitely led us all to the conclusion that we were moving in this way. And I would recommend that that the task force consider B and C be struck for now. That would be my suggestion, that we don't move that far, that we look at A and then we stop there, and then if we need to look at B and look at C. So that would be something that I've come here really to express, is that you don't bulk all of these things into one category, that you simply take it step by step so that the public can understand what's going on, because this has led to the disruption that the Wright building has been experiencing, and I would say that C has led us there. B is not great either, by the way, because it gives the wrong impression. It certainly does. So, and I don't say that investing in enforcement is not the answer, but I would suggest that investing in the Social Navigator program may be more helpful, as we can see in the decline of serious crime that's happening. You may, if the task force would accept maybe a suggestion, we could revisit B and C. So today I have prepared a speech, and I apologize if I have received any misconceptions as a citizen, but unfortunately that's what stirred it up. So today, my name is Damon Starr. Regardless of my social status, I stand before you as nothing more than an engaged citizen, fortunate to have the opportunity to express my concerns regarding the direction of this task force and its proposed bylaw initiatives. Lest we forget those who are not as fortunate to have a voice in this forum, but that your task force may rain either positive or negative effects upon. I trust I am in good company, and we all share in a common goal of societal inclusiveness without prejudice. My concerns do not lie in the realm of illicit activity for which law exists and a crackdown is welcomed. My concerns lie with those that one may identify as nuisance behaviors, and why at this time this task force has chosen to group them together. With some cynicism, I would say that it may be justified in simplifying enforcement's ability to deal with the issues at hand. However, I would suggest a more maligned outcome for those netted within. An initiative created to scare or intimidate its targets for their very existence would be much harder to pitch than one all-encompassing policy that includes those extremes. Discussing drug dealing with busking or prostitution with loitering appears insincere and for that reason should be avoided. It is undoubtedly clear that the city and the many BIAs within Lower Hamilton have contributed to a resurgence in vitality to their communities and to the general atmosphere of our downtown areas. It would be shameful after all this progress to move in a totalitarian direction that would unintentionally criminalize our most vulnerable. There is no doubt in my mind an illusion of doing policy will work to remove the presence of our homeless, our poor, our mentally disabled, our addicted, and our unemployed from our very streets. As citizens, affluent or otherwise, we should take no pride in endorsing such a plan that robs us of compassion. What is nuisance? Merely nothing more than the perception of what we may not understand. As I stand here today, there are 5,500 households in our community waiting for affordable housing. A staggering 17,000 Hamiltonians will have accessed our food banks in the past 30 days. and close to 100,000 of our neighbors currently live in poverty. Like it or not, for many, downtown is their home. This is not perception. This is a reality. I encourage our city and our many BIAs to continue the good work that they are doing and build upon it. I suggest this task force possibly rectify not just perception, but take a bolder, more empathetic approach. Identify and address those root causes for long-term resolve. After 22 years in business, I have experienced both success and failure, only to realize my business would operate best when its management is willing to look at the bigger picture, understand its owners, its employees, and its customers, finding balanced and well-reasoned solutions for everyday challenges. In my view, this task force is the management. Your decisions regarding initiatives such as this will define Hamilton's success or failure. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Questions? Anyone from the task force? I appreciate it, and the preamble as well, Damon, and thank you for contacting myself and ultimately our clerk and appearing before us. Move to receive the presentation, moved by Mary, seconded by Terry. All in favor? It is carried. Appreciate it. And Elizabeth McGuire is now before us. She is the chair of the Campaign for Adequate Welfare and Disability Benefits, respecting bylaw enforcement in the downtown core.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Farr and members of the task force for receiving me. I'm going to bring a different perspective to the, like I'm defending the rights of the poor. So what this is the law of unintended consequences. That's why. Because, I don't know if everyone knows, but 3,000 suspension letters go out every month denying people their benefits. This traumatized them. They're in crises. The lousy $626 they get to pay for their rent, to buy food, to pay their public mobile phone is just pulled out from under them. And that equals 142 people each day walking to 119 King Street West or walking from 119 King Street West. 142 people. So if they're traumatized, they sit in Gore Park and look strange. And last fall there was a letter to the editor saying zombies are in Gore Park. These are traumatized people in crises. And that's why, as John said, they congregate downtown. Because misery loves company, and yes, they're cheerful with each other, but their lives are in crises. And moment. So these suspension letters, they send people downtown. They traumatize people frequently because they receive, some of them receive more than 6 or 8 a year. And I think that if we then tell them, go away, you're not wanted, I mean, all of this contributes to mental illness. It is. The stress of always having your income threatened leads to mental illness. You can't go and get a job when you're traumatized. Now, Mike Harris brought in this system, and it is still functioning now, and that is surveil and punish. And the model survives today. Surveil and punish, surveil and punish. Find any reason at all to deny people their lousy $626. And I know this is a provincial issue. I know that. And we have to ensure that we are doing all we can to change this model. And I would ask the task force to join in the initiative to bring about a change of the service delivery model, because that is what is causing the problem. So unintended consequences. This is the consequences of that system. People need to congregate. They need to be with each other. They're alone in the world. They have no money. They're about to be evicted because landlords, I mean, we respect landlords, but gee, they have to pay mortgages. But suddenly, without warning, you are suspended from your benefits. And we have worked with OW staff to try and stop them going out at the end of the month. So, you don't have an opportunity to fix the problem at the end of the month because you're busy being kicked out of your place. So, I think that if we all join together and recognize it's the service delivery model of social services that is the problem here, and we should all be attacking it because it's labor intensive, paper intensive, and workers are reporting that they're spending 70% of their work time on paperwork. They're not helping their clients. They don't have the time to. They're already stressed. And so I would encourage all of us to join an initiative to tell Queen's Park, change the bloody service delivery model. It's too expensive. We can no longer afford it. It was built in the 80s when, the heyday and we all had money to spend. And it still survives today. It's drawing money out of needed services. If we stop with the suspension letters, we'd have money left over to do, daycare or places for the already marginalized to go. And if we scoot them away from downtown, we are further marginalizing the people who are already marginalized. So, it's like people who say, oh, well, OW needs more money. We'll give them another $100 over 4 years, I think was the budget. It's still the service delivery model. Punitive, hurting people, causing mental illness, and it has to change. Thank you.
Thanks. Questions? Mary, and then John.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Have you had this conversation with Andrea Horvath?
I don't think I can address that kindly. Well, we did once a couple of years ago, and she said, yeah, I know it's punitive. Thanks, for that, Andrea.
John?
Through the chair, could I...
Mike, John. Thanks.
Through the chair, could I ask a question of Jillian Hendrick?
Yeah, of course, yes.
Jillian, regarding the situation where someone may feel that they have to be out at the end of the month, is there not rules, regulations, restrictions for evictions? And could you clarify? I fully sympathize with those who may have lost their benefits, short term as it may be. But I sympathize with that. But are there not ways of mitigating that situation?
Through the chair, John, if you could just clarify.
No, what I'm thinking of is a person has lost their benefits. The presenter has indicated that they may be out of their home. Are there not restrictions of that landlord tossing that person out because they have lost their benefits for that particular month?
John, I'm not 100%. Are you talking about under the Tenancies Act?
Yes, the Tenancies Act.
As far as hardship goes and everything?
Right, and the eviction, the restrictions regarding the eviction and such.
Certainly, I'm not an expert in eviction, but I know that there are steps that people have to go through, and often people don't understand the eviction process. Sometimes it's landlords that don't, but often it's tenants that don't too. And so I think it's very important that the tenants ask the questions, because people can't be automatically evicted because they can't make their payment that month.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for the delegate or staff with respect to what the delegate had said? I'll just make a quick comment. Elizabeth, you can react if you like through you, Chair. You had mentioned that, again, and we want clarity here, and we understand that the two may be associated. You said, quote, that we're looking for, quote, go away, you're not wanted, end quote, and you're talking about the poverty issue specifically. And we were trying to address, and Damon, the delegate before you made some good points that I'll address in just a moment, but the criminal activity that was associated to a large majority of the original delegation that brought us here today. And while the two may be related, and you understand that, and other delegates understand that, and we appreciate hearing from that perspective, when we're saying go away, you're not wanted, what our task force was generally focusing on with the three-part motion was the criminal behavior that we want to go away and that is not wanted. So you understand that through the chair.
Yes, if I can address that. Desperate people do desperate things. And as John said, you have to escape. You cannot survive the social assistance system without, one, getting a mental illness because of the constant stress of being threatened, and two, you need an escape. You can't go to the show. You can't go to a restaurant, maybe have a couple of drinks and something to eat. You can't travel to, go on vacation. Where are you going to go? Downtown. So yes, but I would suggest to you that I'm just guessing here, a good half of them are desperate people trying to get some money together to go buy some food.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Move to receive. Moved by Kathy, seconded by Megan. All in favor? It is carried. And that is it for the delegations. We approved the correspondence, and we now may discuss all that we heard. If there's anybody with any questions or comments from the task force. Kathy?
I would like to start because I think the motion that we had put on the floor in May hasn't really been addressed yet, because I think that the staff have not really done an adequate job in my mind as to how to establish a 3-year pilot project with municipal law enforcement and Hamilton Police Services without telling us how would they do that, what would it cost, what does that look like in terms of a pilot project, and if we're looking at establishing something, to look at the impact of that, of all of the bylaws that are being broken, the laws that are being broken in downtown Hamilton as part of that study.
Okay. Who would like to address that?
Through the chair, Kathy, I do realize that we didn't address all of them. What we wanted to do is we wanted to make sure that we brought back all the information from Barrie and show that Barrie's model was more of a nuisance. They focused on skateboards, bikes on sidewalks. The problems that were identified were more of a criminal nature. So before staff did an in-depth report on this, we wanted to make sure that that's indeed what the task force wanted. To do a report would take a little bit longer, and it was my understanding that the task force actually wanted us to report back at the end of June, which was impossible, and this is the amount of information we could bring back in the timelines that we were given.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do appreciate that, Kelly, and I appreciate the fact that you brought together the discussions around what Barrie had in place and what we have in place. It seems to me very appropriate that we do have a lot of these pieces already in place. So that's why I think we did not ask for a nuisance bylaw to be created. We already felt that there was enough initiatives in Hamilton to look at moving forward with some kind of pilot project to work together to look at the issues that are happening downtown. I can tell you that it's not only businesses, bricks and mortar businesses that are being affected, it's Hamilton's tourism industry that's being affected. When we have convention delegates that say that it's not available, or it's not appropriate that we bring our convention to downtown Hamilton because that there are criminal activities happening that our delegates are being subjected to. So it's part of that whole process that we understand the impacts it will have on downtown if we don't do something today.
Anyone else? Anybody from staff? No? Okay, we did get answers. I'd be inclined to take Part C right out, but in fact, it's been answered anyway through Kelly's presentation. On B, and I appreciate the very poignant, relevant observation by Damon, our third delegate, with respect to B and C. On B, staff include in the report the possibility of having a full-time municipal law enforcement. As our previous speaker, the executive director of the Downtown BIA, has just noted, we did not get an answer to that. And for Damon's edification and others who may be wondering why that's there, it was this task force that did hear in preliminary discussions as it related to the issue at hand that resources would be an issue. And so generally in any committee or standing committee or task force, you'll ask staff to say, well, what does it look like if you go away and tell us what it looks like on a budgetary perspective more than anything to resource. Because we're being told as a task force we don't have the manpower in some situations, and in this situation I think that's what we heard. To some capacity we didn't have those kinds of resources. I think all of us have a much better understanding now on what we do have and what we have accomplished thanks to Scott's presentation, and so we could still address that here today going forward. And then the feasibility of establishing a pilot project, also we had a good update from Kelly and Scott that gave us the nuts and bolts if we were to still head in that direction. I think clearly, and maybe Marty Hazel can, as the director or the senior director of municipal law enforcement, I'm glad he's here, could probably speak to the budgetary aspect or how it would play out on a budgetary in a budgetary way with city council, as this is a subcommittee that reports to council. So to further elaborate on A, as it respects the monetary issue, because all of these motions tend to do, I think I'll ask Marty to comment.
So, Mr. Chairman, in either A or B, we've kind of given you a rundown that it's a resource issue and maybe a cost issue. We simply have many bylaws that we enforce, and council's given us a priority listing. So we would have to either go back and rejig our priorities or look at new staffing. But either A or B, we tried to meet your deadline to come here today, but we have to work comprehensively with the police on that. As we understand it, they're primarily police issues, criminal code issues. There's a very limited, if any, role for bylaw enforcement, because the Barrie project was a little bit different. So we would have to really work with the police and try to understand how we could complement what they're doing now. And again, we see it as a limited role. We'd have to have a lot of discussions with the police to see how we could help, and then try to figure out if we have more resources, or it could be job evaluations and pay raises for existing officers because of a different skill level. So we'd have to do a lot more work with the police. It would take a little bit of a while to figure out how we could work with them. So A and B would take us a lot of time. We wanted to make sure that we were in the right direction and bring something back to you before we did all that work.
And Ken.
Yes, Mr. Chair. The other thing we heard very clearly through Kelly's presentation is one of the enforcement tools that bylaw would have, or the police have, are fines. But there is nothing provincially that allows you to collect fines. So the people that are receiving the tickets, the fines for bylaw violations, just don't pay the fines, and there's no way to enforce that. You can't incarcerate them. The fines just sit there, and we've heard this problem throughout the province of Ontario, where there's millions and millions of dollars of outstanding fines. So the only tools that you have in this situation from a policing point of view or a bylaw point of view would be, in fact, tickets or fines or bylaw violations. And I think through Scott's presentation, you saw that you have 40 officers who action that are out there, visible presence. You have 5 mounted units of visible presence. And I think Scott and his action team are going to make this a priority. I'm not trying not to speak for them. But really, I think through the presentation, you can see that there probably is no benefit of having a joint team of police and bylaw because, again, the tools that they have is very limited.
Okay. So, that said, given that we have a confirmed focus from the task force here today on really the relevant issue, and that's criminal activity, given that the criminal activity has been over and over again, in particular in media, and then leading up to today and here today, been re-emphasized, and we don't need to go on about it again, the drug use and the public urination and those issues that have been raised and initially were raised in May and got us to the point we're at. I turn to Scott Raston, who has already, through you, Chair, through his good presentation and relevant presentation, noted the many actions from Action and others on Hamilton Police Services and initiatives that have occurred and continue to occur. And then, again, if you could reiterate, Scott, reference those 3 items that you had referenced at the end of your presentation. There's a current police action, I forget what you called it, through you, Chair, and then the 2 other things that you had mentioned. So in other words, what current action you're taking now?
Are we talking about the special project right now?
That's it.
Okay. To summarize, okay. First of all, when we compare us to the Barrie example, there are a lot of police resources that we have already in downtown that Barrie did not have. To get a further commitment for additional resources, I don't think is necessary.
Okay.
We have the action strategy is very flexible. It does move, like we have constant enforcement in the downtown area, constant visibility, but we also acknowledge that there will be spots, hot spots that will develop, such as we've done in the past with Show World, we've done with 94 York Street. We've actually worked with the library and the program there. So,
and this is one now.
And the one we're looking at right now, we are constantly working on the Right House. We are doing what is part of the problem-oriented policing. It will be some enhancing police and visibility, which we do all the time anyways. There will be some selected drug enforcement. I'm not going to get into details on that. We will be doing environmental design. We will have our crime prevention officers and look at why some of this, why criminals will pick this area to do their enforcement. It is an ongoing project. It normally takes 4 or 5 months to actually work on. But also part of the project is we do work with the stakeholders. For a successful problem-oriented policing project, you must work with the community. It cannot just be a police problem. If there's not a buy-in from everybody, as some of the speakers said, that will provide you the long-term solutions. If you just dump it onto the police, say solve this problem, you may get a short-term solution, but it will not last. So what we're trying to do through this project is create a long-term solution so we don't have to revisit this in another year.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm sorry I wasn't clear going into the question, but just to sum it up, you have a flexible action team that's of 40 officers. You're able to, you are focusing on the Right House as we speak. You can't get any details to us on some of that police enforcement. Understand. You also agreed earlier that you would meet with Irene Hubar, share with her what you can, which we appreciate, and that offline discussion will happen soon. And the environmental design study, which you said 4 or 5 months it would take, and I don't even need to move a motion or even offer direction. You come to most, if not all, of these meetings, and when that environmental design study is through, that focuses on work with the community, as you've done with many other initiatives in the past, including, of course, Social Navigator, which is a great example. You will report back to this task force, obviously, when the urban design the environmental design is done.
Certainly, I'll actually do a presentation on the POP project upon its completion.
Okay, and then to sum up, and hearing from both Ken and Marty from municipal law enforcement, where we're hearing there's very little benefit or no benefit, that what we're focusing on, task force, is criminal in nature and a criminal issue, and therefore, for the most part, relates to our Hamilton Police Services. And hearing what Scott has just summed up for us, I'm of mind to say, first and foremost, thank you to both Kelly and Scott for getting us closer to the answers to A and B and C, or getting us closer to A anyway and B, and at your mercy as to where we want to, knowing what action has been taken, what current action is now taking place, and what's future action is taking place, will take place. I'm wondering where we want to go at this point with what we have before us. So if there's anybody, otherwise I would suggest we receive the presentations and look forward to a report back and offline meetings with the property manager and Hamilton Police Services. John?
Through you, could I ask a question of Scott? You indicated that there seemed to be a turnaround of serious nature regarding the courts looking at these problems, in that they are cooperating more in directing these persons to the social navigator. Could you indicate roughly when that turnaround began, and perhaps you could come back in 3 months, 6 months, and indicate how that turnaround has affected, how many have been turned around, rather than just let out on the street again and created the quick appearance that Irene has found.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have to stress that the Social Navigator program is not an alternative to arrest. Some people, we tried to give alternatives and get them into the proper help, but some people still need to be arrested. When people are arrested, we've found out that the courts believe saw some benefits in the program, and that they have started to pre-trial release people under the direction of the Social Navigator program to try to get help, so by the time they get to their trial, they've got pieces of their life in order. That means so they don't have to be incarcerated after the trial. That probably started earlier in the program. The program started in 2011-12, and that was one of the benefits that we saw that we weren't actually anticipating. I would say probably now we run about, there's 8 people at any time that are actually in the Social Navigator program that have been court mandated. And we run probably, early stats, 70% of those people have turned out to be successfully going through the program. About a 30% end up being reincarcerated because they don't follow through.
Thank you. Kathy?
Mr. Chair, just through you to Scott, I hope that the POP program that you're initiating might include more visibility, because we talked a little bit about how when there's officers clearly visible in the area of Gore Park, that this activity goes away. I know it's displacing it to somewhere else, but at least it's trying to help the situation that's happening at the moment. And I'm wondering if that is part of the initiative.
You are correct, that is part of the initiative, but that can't be your only solution. Once again, as I stressed before, we have to find a long-term solution. Putting an officer standing in that corner for the whole day is not practical, and what we want to be able to do is develop a situation where, even without an officer there, that the people don't choose that spot to congregate.
So I don't know if we did we receive the staff presentation? So move to receive Scott and Kelly's presentation. Moved by Terry, seconded by John. All in favor? That is carried. We appreciate the update today and continued updates as it relates to the issue before us. And thank you and welcome Ken Leendertz from HBS to MLE. You were supposed to retire, but what the heck. We'll look forward to working with you as the Director of Licensing. I've got a lot of directors in your department, Marty. Okay, and we appreciate you being here today, and thank you, Marty Hazel, as well, and all the staff that took the time to be here. One of the staff that has to get going, who's been on another topic, interested in giving an update and an answer to Kathy's question from our last meeting respecting tourism-oriented directional signage, has to go soon. So if the committee will allow, if we can move up 8.3, the TODs, and to allow Susan Monarch an opportunity to get to her meeting in a timely fashion. She's coming here as the Manager of Tourism and Creative Industries with an update regarding this matter. So I think maybe we'll just hear from Susan through you. This is item 8.3 on the agenda. Thanks.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. It started with an email that I received from Peter and Lori regarding, you addressed a question to this committee about what happened with the signage on the highway, which is a provincial government program. And all I can tell you, I gave you the answer and the explanation, even though it's a totally unsatisfactory answer. The signs were taken down. It appears nobody really assumed that. At one time that program was ran, let's put it this way, every individual property, whether you're the African Lion Safari, whether you're the, if you're putting directional signage on the highway, it is your responsibility, and you do those contracts through the province. At some point, and this was always, while it's through the province, traffic was responsible in Hamilton here for, there's the wayfinding stuff that does come off into the city streets, and that was ultimately done by traffic. At one point that was transferred over to tourism, because then we established the same kind of program on the Link and Red Hill, and that is solely our program. It isn't provincially ran. We just kind of follow the same criteria. Now, at one point it came up that, and this I'm sorry to say, it was a pre-me and a lot of changes. There was signage, directional signage to downtown. The best I can find out is that there was one going off at Main West and one at Aberdeen, I think, in between there and Main, directing to the downtown core. I think it was anywhere up to $10,000 that was being paid. And I do believe that at one point the executive director, David Adames, said, okay, nobody's paying this. He paid it out of a fund that came in from the province, which was then eliminated in 2012. It was $400,000, so there was literally no funding. And at that time, the staff that were working on it went out and met with traffic and public works and economic development, and basically it came down to, and I don't know, I was under the impression, but Kathy can update me on this, but in the end, the province couldn't get anybody to sign the contracts, and the signs were taken down, unfortunately. So bad, I would say overall bad for, the city. But so right now the program is still there. There's no question these signs could be re-erected. I think it comes right down to who, when, where, and what. But I know we are working on a very comprehensive wayfinding project right now that is brilliant work being done by the Downtown Urban Renewal Division. But yeah, most definitely, it is a provincially ran program. We can certainly help, if this moves forward, we can help you with, Chris King is the contact, we can help with all of that, but it's really going to come down to where you would want them and who's going to be responsible for the cost. It's, it depending on how many directions you want to come in from, it could add up to between $10,000 and $15,000 depending on where you'd want them situated. Over to you.
Okay, Kath, did you want to?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yes, this was brought up as a part of the Clean and Safe Task Force to identify ways that people will feel safe coming into downtown. It's not a BIA thing per se, it's getting people comfortable with our one-way streets and trying to not have accidents when they're coming downtown and so on. So I think it's important to continue to keep that on the discussion level. I know that the wayfinding study is underway, and that the TODS program is part of the wayfinding study to direct people into the downtown core. Especially when Pan Am is coming, we want people to feel that it's an easy way to get into downtown. Where is City Hall? Where are some of the services that they need in downtown? So I think it's important to keep that initiative moving forward. And thanks, Sue, for updating us.
Hey, and we do have, does this task force need an update on how the wayfinding works? We do have a representative from Urban Renewal here. I think we had a presentation from Glenn not long ago. Anybody need to hear from Urban Renewal? Okay. Move to receive Sue's presentation, and thanks for waiting for us. Moved by Susan. Moved by Susan, seconded by Terry. All in favor? Carried. This is highly unorthodox, but the chair is being interrupted by the public or the media. It's okay.
Oh, wait, sorry, you never know.
That's your response.
No, there's no response.
Okay. So where are
Oh, no. Probably soon.
Okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay. We are usually not as formal as we are today. Don't worry about it. Back to 8.2. Terry wants to offer a verbal update from respecting concerns about the John Street Methadone Clinic.
Yeah, there was a question asked at the last meeting, and I guess we were wrapping up about Kathy had heard rumblings that the methadone clinic had closed down. They did close down for a few days, and that was due to the landlord actually locking the door because the rent hadn't been paid, which subsequently transpired into an investigation into the management team that was on site.
Hold on.
Okay.
Nothing you're about to report on is alleged. This is all public knowledge, like through the courts and.
I'm not going to
We can't
say-
speculate.
No.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
Just so that there was a management shift, that the management team that was in there was taken out and a new management team was put in place. So that the methadone clinic was closed down for a few days at that time. So that was to answer that question.
Okay, thanks, Terry. Sorry to interrupt. Thank you. Move to receive the presentation. Moved by Susan, seconded by Megan. All in favor? That's carried. Any motions or notices of motion today? Seeing none? Anybody have any items of new business?
Do you want an update on the business plan that we put together, 5-year plan? You want me to do that?
Does the committee, I know we have a lot of busy professionals sitting around this room. Do you want to hold off for our next meeting for that 5-year plan from Scott? Okay. Move to table Scott's presentation for our next meeting on the 5-year plan. Moved by Kathy, seconded by Susan. All in favor? Any opposed? Are you opposed, John? John's opposed. Have a sidebar with him. That carries. Thank you, though, Scott, for coming in, and I think it'll be good for a month and a half from now. Motion then to adjourn this meeting. Moved by John Hawker, seconded by Terry Mines. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everybody.